Hi, I'm Professor Beck Strah.
And I'm Professor Eric Bronson, and you're listening to Prison Breakdown.
2, 3, break!
Eat the spoil is fun, but we're gonna bust out of here.
2, 3, break!
I'm locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
2, 3, break!
I can honestly say I'm a changed man. No danger to society here. God's honest truth.
2, 3, break!
I'm not leaving this cell. I'll get out my way. The right way.
2, 3, break!
Ahoy, dudes, and welcome back to the pirate ship. Eric, how are you? Let's check in.
The Jolly Roger Williams ship. We are sailing. The weather is beautiful on campus, and flying high like all the hawks. And man, this is off to a great start here for this show. I tell you what, this is exciting. This is exciting. Wait till you see our little news off the razor wire. We've got good stuff for everybody.
I can't wait. And let's check in with producer Britt.
Hello.
Producer, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Wow. Did Britt bring the
excellent.
energy today or what?
I did.
Shot out of a cannon.
He brought NPR energy.
All right. Well, are you both ready for a little news off the razor wire that's a little bit more relaxed, maybe even a little bit comical in some way?
That sounds...
Yeah, dude, hit us with some news.
All right.
Fresh news, hot off the razor wire.
All right. In today's news, hot off the razor wire, we're going to not have such a serious news bit, not because it's not somebody's life, but it's because it's the individual and nobody's really feeling sorry for him. Danny Masterson, the disgraced That 70s Show star, was convicted last year of raping 2 women in 2003. Since then has started his prison sentence and has been moved to multiple facilities. And the reason why is the other inmates just keep kicking his ass. So he is now on his third.
Oh, snap.
The Masterson was found guilty of raping the 2 women years ago, and since then has been locked up and received a 30-year sentence in California prisons. Well, he started off and didn't take him long. Well, he was at Corcoran, which is kind of a famous prison. Has held lots of famous people. One of the most infamous individuals to be held in the California penal system, Charles Manson, was held there for quite some time. But he's been getting...
Doesn't ring a bell.
Well, maybe we need to do a prison episode on Chuck.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So according to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, Masterson was now at California Men's Colony, which is comprised of 2 physically separate complexes. One of the complexes is based in a rehabilitation type of model with dozens of classroom counseling offices and vocational shops. And then the other focuses on educational and self-help programs. This is a minimum to medium security institution where most of the inmates are getting close to serving out their sentences and are on a pre-release type of program, pre-release type of program where they're focusing on re-entry into society. So this is where they have a lot of the behavior therapy program, substance abuse education. But it's also, because it's a minimum to medium security institution, will be a tad bit safer for Mr. Masterson, who just can't stop from getting stomped on the yard.
Do we have any more context into what is causing these ass kickings?
I think it's simply because, he's famous He raped 2 women, and clearly is not someone who can defend himself physically. He's pretty narrow.
Yeah. I remember, like, I've not watched that much that 70s show. I remembered him being funny in it, and I've heard in recent years from friends who have watched it that he's much more cringe than funny if you watch it as an adult.
Oh,
can anyone speak to that?
No, I sure can't. That wasn't one of my shows either.
No, it is aggressively mediocre.
Yeah. So
never that into it, and they rebooted it recently. Wait, why? Why? Who's this really for?
I'm not that one. I don't get. Was never a big fan of it. I probably watched 2 or 3 episodes of it my entire life. So I don't know. Producer Britt, you're really the pop culture whiz in this group. So if this isn't something that sucked you in, I don't know why it got so popular.
I feel it's like one of those kind of like flyover state comedies, like anything Chuck Lorre. I'm not really into that type of media. I'm into, objectively like worse stuff, but also objectively mediocrity is like the greatest sin media can commit.
Yeah. Oh, well, that reminds me. I do have another film for you at the end of our podcast today. I hope it is equally horrible as what you've been watching thus far, and so there's nothing mediocre about it. It sounds like it's just trash.
Hell yeah, into trash.
Hell yeah.
I'll say.
Yeah, let's go back to Danny Masterson though. So 30 years is for raping 2 women, a horrific crime, and Danny Masterson, like 30 years is a tough sentence.
Yeah.
Like that's a sentence that people are getting for murder. And
possibility of parole.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Eric?
Yep.
You got anything on that?
Yeah, he's up for parole. His first parole hearing can be in 2042 with good behavior. So, I mean,
I hope to hear that he makes the most of his time and he goes through the rehabilitation processes and does the work he needs to on himself so he can emerge from prison a changed man eventually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the best we can hope for.
But just so you know, he started his first prison that he started at when he was originally sentenced is the infamous North Kern State Prison, which is one of their maximum security prisons in the state, and it houses some really naughty individuals in the state of California. So, things got off to a rough start, and then he got bumped down to Corcoran, which is also infamous for how tough it is, and now he's at a place where should be a tad bit easier for him to do his time. But again, it's any of these prisons, if you're, because we don't know the exact details of everything, we don't know if he's provoking inmates to do this, or if it's just because, hey, I want to bump my status up in the prison hierarchy by stomping this star. It's hard to say.
Yeah, we could definitely see that as a motive too. Of like, now you're the guy who kicked Danny Masterson's ass, rather than just inmate 4715 or whatever. That's status,
isn't it? Inmate 67,
right? Especially given his offenses.
Isn't it inmate 6741 did a bad thing?
If I was serving a life sentence, I can't say that I wouldn't kick Danny Masterson's ass just to do it.
Just for shits and giggle.
Just for the pleasure of it. Yeah, it's an experiential thing. It's like why people go skydiving. So they can talk about it afterward.
Have you been?
Skydiving?
Yeah.
No, I'm afraid of heights, man. Not for me.
What?
You?
No, I've never been. I
hate heights.
Well, no, mine has nothing to do with heights. I'm too damn fat for any of those parachutes. They can't put enough on my body.
I'm also afraid of like those small planes where they tell you, oh, you have to sit on this side of the plane because of the weight distribution. And you can feel every slight breeze. Those planes are not made for tall men like ourselves in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I did for a while I had several hours towards a private pilot's license. So I was flying one of those. And it is.
Really?
Oh, yeah. That's nerve-wracking. Nerve-wracking when you're trying to land that damn thing. Oh, my goodness. You want to talk about flop sweats. It just, it also could have been that, when you're trying to fly in, South Texas and it's 110 degrees outside and inside that little plane, it's 140. But man,
yeah,
it was brutal. Brutal, even just on your nerves. It just rattle you.
Why did you leave the pilot's club? What made you step out?
The price of jet fuel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're looking at the time, the jet fuel was probably around $12, $13 a gallon, and you burn through 3 gallons before you even take off. Or on takeoff, 3 gallons is gone. So you're like, okay. And then you fly around a little bit, you're going through $100 easily in fuel, and you have to rent the plane. So, I don't have that kind of money. I don't own a private plane kind of money. That's for certain. So, ended up leaving.
No. That's a shame. You're telling me, though, it's not cost effective to rent a little plane for the day to fly to some little town in Texas?
No.
From some other town in Texas?
We did do a flight from Beaumont, Texas to Cleveland, Ohio. And back in a little 6-seater. So that was an adventure. So my instructor, the two of us, we flew our families up to Cleveland and stayed there for a while and then went back. Yep. So.
Oh, that rocks. Cleveland.
I tell you, that was probably ended up being the price of a nice vacation somewhere for the family. Yeah, so
somewhere like Cleveland?
No, not that nice of a vacation. I'm talking a decent vacation, like maybe in the Caribbean. But yeah, so at that point, we then bailed on it. Like, this is too much. So
we hold Cleveland to the highest standards
absolutely.
On this podcast.
I mean, it doesn't get much better than Cleveland. I mean, not only is the city of Cleveland fantastic, but it's in the amazing state of Ohio. So
it feels like Eric is now trolling the podcast, just trying to get drops.
All right, so that's our news.
Thank you for that update.
Yes, absolutely.
And are we ready for the topic? Oh, the day.
Oh yeah, give it to us.
Today, my friends, we are talking about felon disenfranchisement. Eric, can you tell us what is felon disenfranchisement?
I cannot. That's why you're the professor for the day. So I would like to. Yeah. I would like to hear what the heck this inmate disenfranchisement is all about. So, if you commit a felony, you lose the right to vote. That is the idea behind felon disenfranchisement. Yes.
It's implemented in different ways across the 50 states, and we're going to get into that today. But the idea is that felons, whether they're in prison or not, if they've been convicted of a felony, they are not able to vote and participate in our democracy. If we were to look at the face of it, the pros and cons, as far as pros, it's another form of punishment that is cost-free. It doesn't cost the government anything just to say you can't vote. And some people might look at it as a pro. I do not, but it separates us, the law-abiding public, from them, those who do not abide by laws. As far as the cons, a very real con is that it damages...
Sorry. We need the snare. Thank you. Tell us more about the cons.
So it harms the fabric of democracy. It affects minorities at very disproportionate levels, and it is harmful to reintegration processes. So let's break into some of the history of it. So in medieval Europe, it said if you were to break the law, you can die a civil death where you lose these rights and you are given a dishonorable status as a person. It's like you're breaking the social contract. If you break the rules, you give up your right to participate in the government. And offenders were labeled as unfit to enjoy political participation. Now, cut forward in time to pre-Civil War. Leading up to the Civil War, Louisiana was the only state on the books to have any kind of felon disenfranchisement laws. Following the Civil War, felon disenfranchisement was implemented, and it worked hand in hand with Jim Crow laws at the time. And there were these punishments for crimes that were most often committed by people of color. And the crimes would be like, you're not having papers when a white person asks you if you have a job or not, or you're not paying the tax to even get that job in the first place. And this applied to all these minor offenses that wouldn't actually require prison time, but it's just a way that white people could exclude black people from democracy. It resulted in over 10 times the number of black people losing the right to vote compared to white people at the time. So that's a little historical context for you. What do you think so far?
Well, I'm really shocked that Louisiana would do something historically that disenfranchised people of color, because that's just not their history, right? So no. But I do like the idea of being able to participate and entertain oneself in politics as being, supposedly a right, but us being able to strip it away based on criminal behavior, because that's we all know we're all a bunch of damn criminals. It's just who gets caught and then who has the resources to get out of it. As we see, simply this one old man who's running for president against another old man who's just about the same age but has 91 charges against him. If that was anybody else, they'd already be locked up. It's not shocking what was going on in Louisiana and how that just, obviously if it was a good idea for whites in Louisiana at that time to be able to hold control over people, and the rest of the South is going to jump on that pretty quick as well and spread like wildfire as a way to maintain control over people.
Yeah, and growing up, it was one of those things I took for granted as, of course, you break the law and you lose the right to vote. I didn't look at this critically, and then you turn it on the face of it and look at it and think, why should somebody actually lose the right to vote for committing a felony? And there's no real reason.
Right.
That outside of subverting democracy, there's no real reason for this.
Right.
It's sick. Unless I am committing voting fraud,
right,
or something that is directly pertaining to voting, why is it affecting my ability to participate in civic society?
Right, and stripping away one of your human rights here in the United States, right? That we supposedly beat our chest with about, you have the right to do these things, and voting is one of them, and then we're going to strip it from people because they've been convicted of a crime. It's I don't know. I think it's one of the most disappointing laws that we again, it's not every state that does this, and they can change it. But I think if you have politicians and individuals that are in the courts, that are elected officials who make policy and laws that impact the way you live as an incarcerated individual, you should be able to cast a vote about how they're doing, because if they're just ignoring prison conditions, you should have a say, because you're the expert, not us that sit out here that read these journal articles and these books and get to meet with inmates. The inmates know what the hell's going on. They should be able to at least cast their own vote about the politicians that are making the rules that keep them locked up.
Yeah, these should be the folks who are like at the forefront of social activism on it and have the influence and have the voice to be able to say, look, these conditions are not right. Maybe we do something about this. So we need more in that way. We need more democracy brought to prisons where, did we talk about this last time, where some prisons exercise a form of prison democracy with like a prison council, like Norfolk in MTI Norfolk in Massachusetts has a council where it's five inmates who are elected to this board, and they sit down at meetings with I believe like the warden and the superintendent, and they actually get a voice in what's going on, and they are able to. They wrote a report in 2016 about how the quality of the water was inadequate, and it had high levels of some trace mineral in it that is linked to Parkinson's disease. So they actually get a say in what's going on, and they can bring these things to the attention of the press. Like they submit these reports to the Boston Globe, to the governor, and they actually get to say something about it. It's interesting to see some of the reports. They're online. They're clearly typewritten because they're not giving the inmates computers apparently, but it's a good idea of like an internal form of democracy. Now let's make that more democratic by bringing the right to vote and giving them a voice in outside matters too.
Well, the other thing, if you think about what
are we worried they're going to crash the government?
Yeah. Well,
what's the deal?
Yeah. So politicians are, because they think that, hey, if I'm making these rules, they're going to vote against me. But if you think about what you're talking about with that internal council, talk about a real rehab tool, because you're empowering people, you're helping them, get into positions where they might be responsible for others and the conditions of their confinement and have some real outcomes. And that might be one of the greatest tools of helping people get rehabilitated, not just programs where we say, hi, my name is Eric and and I'm an alcoholic. This is something that is really getting them on a path where they're, hey, I'm responsible for this, internal policy that has changed, what's going on here at the prison. That's a great system they have set up. But yeah, this also needs to be done at the level where inmates are allowed to still vote and have a say in the politicians and the people that are changing the rules and laws about how they're locked up. Yeah, absolutely. And so I digress a little bit. Let's get back to felon disenfranchisement, but we'll talk more about inmate democracy another time. So felon disenfranchisement at present is currently used in 48 states. Maine and Vermont are the only two states that are exempt from this. So if you are in prison or jail in Maine or Vermont, you're still able to vote. Puerto Rico also allows this. It's not unanimous across the board, though. Most states will ban current inmates from voting. Some ban parolees, some ban felony probationers, or all ex-felons. And at present, 21 states ban prison inmates from voting, including Rhode Island and Massachusetts. 16 states ban people in prison and people who are on parole or probation from voting. And 11 states ban persons in prison, persons on parole, persons on probation, or persons post-sentence from voting. Some of these people end up with this like lifetime ban on voting. And the research suggests the numbers are around 5.2 million Americans are currently denied the right to vote. So I went to school, one of these states that's permanent. The state of Kentucky has a permanent ban on folks. And it's interesting because overwhelmingly the people in the state of Kentucky support that. Hey, this is a permanent ban. Yeah, if you commit a crime, do your time, and that is, in prison. Then when you get out, yeah, you're still going to pay a penalty, and you should have thought of that while you were committing your crime. So it's very interesting to see individuals who support this saying that this is just an extension of the punishment. It's just going to carry on throughout your lifetime. A little bit of an idea that, if you're committing crimes, you're not making good choices. Why should you be able to choose who our politicians are? But I did notice that Alaska has some pretty strong disenfranchisement laws on the books, and that really surprised me because, you know, going up that West Coast, that's only while incarcerated, and I didn't, you know, what the hell's going on in Alaska?
Oh, tell me, how harsh are they in Alaska? I don't actually know this.
No, it's permanent in Alaska. It's permanent unless they get reinstated by based on the number of felonies convicted, I believe. So so a substantial subset of crimes are on the book that they are just always, it's a permanent disenfranchisement. So anything that's violent, you're permanently disenfranchised. And it just shocked me because, you know, California, Oregon, Washington, Canada, much more, much less, you know, in terms of the restrictions. And then you get up to Alaska and it's just like, no, we're going to be hardcore on what we do with folks. So I don't know what the heck you guys were doing up there, but maybe that's why you're down here now.
Exactly. This is a good reason to leave.
Yeah, the lower 48 just, because of our laws.
It's gross though that they would do that. And when it comes to people being able to appeal to get their rights back, it's often based on more arbitrary decision making. So I've seen clips of people in Florida making appeals to get their voting rights back from the last governor, Rick Scott, I believe. And one guy was like, hey, listen, I've done all my education classes. Like I have a solid job. I've done everything I'm supposed to. What more can I do? I keep getting denied. And they're just banging the gavel next.
Yeah.
It's arbitrary.
Right.
And that sucks.
Right.
We should not be making decisions arbitrarily in terms of who gets to participate in democracy and who doesn't, who gets excluded.
Exactly.
That makes no sense.
Exactly. And maybe we do need to put a little of this on the individual and say, hey, if you're going to commit a crime, do it in Maine. No executions. You can still vote. Go to Vermont, Maine. You know, you won't have those ridiculously hot summers that you will in Florida. But yeah, there's, you know, the entire South is really just, it is so punitive down there in terms of how they treat people and how you are able to, you know, try to appeal to get off the disenfranchised list.
But also consider in terms of application, how arbitrary that is. So many charges are pled down, right? What is it, like 95%?
Right.
Of cases never even go to trial. Somebody takes a plea. It's 95 or 97%. It's very high. Most people end up taking a plea, and so they cop to a lesser charge, and then they do their time or whatever the sentence is and go home. But for people who are charged with a felony, they might have done the exact same thing as somebody who's charged with a misdemeanor has done, but the misdemeanor person decided to take a plea.
Right.
That also sucks. So it's arbitrary on that side of the system too.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen where we have, it'd be like the three of us. If the three of us down in Texas killed somebody, and then one or two of us took the plea deal from the district attorney, and we agree to, you know, to go on that witness stand against the third person, they're going to get the death penalty, and the two of us are going to get life in prison, or maybe even get 25 years. You know, it really is. It's a crapshoot, and it's another example of why our criminal justice system can really suck sometimes.
Totally. But for the record, I think Eric would be the snitch.
Oh, definitely. I'd sell you out in a heartbeat. Yeah. I'm going to have visitation. Clearly,
let's get into...
I cannot think up these crimes. I was encouraged and, you know, told to do this by the, you know, the extremely talented mind of Beck Strah. And he planned it all out, and I just was a lookout. He pulled the trigger.
Yeah, and producer Brett was just producing the whole thing.
It's what I do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, adding the screams to the.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
Wait, who the hell were we murdering? Bigfoot? Wait, it's Texas, so maybe it was an El Chupacabra.
So let's get into a less funny topic. We're going to talk about some disparities. So across the United States, it ends up being 1 in 19 African Americans of voting age is ineligible to vote due to felon disenfranchisement laws. And that's at a rate 3.5 times higher than non-African Americans. In 8 states, these states include Alabama, Arizona, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Virginia, more than 1 in 10 Black adults is disenfranchised. And we also see in 34 states, the Latinx population is disenfranchised at a greater rate than in the general population as well. But in the South, the numbers go up even higher, and more than 1 in 5 Black people are unable to vote in the South due to felony convictions. We also see about 1 million women disenfranchised, which takes up about a fifth of the total disenfranchisement numbers.
Fox News doesn't mind those. The women,
yeah,
women
they
being disenfranchised. Fox News is okay with the women not being able to vote, so that's part of their crusade, so they're okay with it. But yeah, you think about what you're talking about here. Minority groups that are oppressed in all kinds of ways historically here in the United States, whether it's banking, housing, education, and then we're going to do things like this where we systematically remove the right to vote at a disproportionate rate compared to whites. It's just you can understand why the system is people say it's rigged, and you understand why they're saying that, because when you look at these types of social phenomena, it really does seem like the system is rigged against people of color here in the United States.
For sure. It's just another method of enforcing these hierarchies for the reasons of people maintaining power. That's it.
Yeah.
Period. Now, is it going to surprise either of you if I tell you that Florida is the leader in disenfranchisement?
Shocked.
No.
This is despite a 2018 ballot referendum to restore voting rights to former offenders. At present, it's over 1.1 million Floridians cannot vote, and this is often because they have not yet paid their court-ordered fines and fees. So following the 2020 election, we actually saw this really shitty fear-mongering tactic done by Florida, where Florida law enforcement arrested 20 people across the state for voter fraud. And the persons involved, the persons arrested, were former offenders who had received voter registration cards following their release, but they're still unable to vote. And the people who were arrested face up to 5 years in prison, and they face a $5,000 fine. And so far, 7 of these cases have resulted in convictions. 4 cases were thrown out on procedural grounds, and the rest remain open, pending, or on appeal. And part of it was the fine print. There was this amendment that kept persons convicted of a murder or a sex offense from automatically being able to vote after they completed their sentences. But many people who were released from prison were not aware of this. And it made for this mass confusion because lawmakers were the ones who inserted this amendment, and they handled it really poorly. The voter registration paperwork does not mention anything about these amendments or any kind of hiccups in people's eligibility to vote. But it should be that if you receive your voter registration card, you should be good to go. And the state should even have this online system where you can look up if you're eligible to vote or not. Well, right? It doesn't make any sense how it's implemented here.
It's so, like you said, absolutely shocking that Florida has these issues. But yeah, I remember, during the election, it was such a big news story that so many people were talking about the disenfranchised individuals throughout the state, and specifically just that they were trying to find ways to keep the list huge. And so, if you didn't pay up all your fines or fees, then you can't vote. And again, it's, to say that just because somebody can't come up with enough money to pay all their fees after being incarcerated doesn't have the right to vote, I think it's a horrible thing that, in a place that claims to be so free and based on these inalienable rights that we supposedly have, and we're just trying to find ways to deny them.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. Part of the point, though, is if you're about to commit a crime, and the whole felon disenfranchisement aspect of felony conviction is it's one of these invisible punishments that most people don't think about. It's not going to be a deterrent. If you are looking to commit a crime, I would say it's going to be very, very few people who stop and they go, I'm not going to commit this crime because I'm afraid I will lose my right to vote. It's not a deterrent. So it makes even less sense that we're implementing it.
Right. And that's,
now back to
the whole idea that
no, go for it.
Almost any punishment is a deterrent is just, is crap. People aren't thinking about the consequences of their actions when they're committing crimes, let alone all of these extraneous types of punishment that we can add on, these BS add-on ones. No, the other, what's the other one about, you become ineligible for student loans when you're convicted.
Yeah.
That's
or
another
public
one.
housing.
Yeah, it's just it's just a way to try for politicians to look like they're being hard on crime when all that they're doing is really just hurting people that have committed some crime. It really is. It's an awful situation. But boy, does America eat it up. We love being punitive, don't we?
Nom, 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 nom. Now, back to this Florida story. Of the 20 persons that have been arrested, at least 12 are identified as registered Democrats and 13 are black. So I guess it's good because DeSantis is making sure that white people are included as well.
What about our friends that get arrested over at the Magic Kingdom? Them too? Those locked up in Mickey's Playhouse.
The point I'm going to make here, though, is that this is especially concerning because it's really public, and it's scare tactics that are designed to keep former offenders away from the polls. If I'm a former offender living in Florida, and I think there's even the most remote possibility that I'm going to do time just for voting, I'm going to stay home. And that sucks.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that is going to hurt voter turnout. And like if you look at persons incarcerated, they are disproportionately poor, disproportionately persons of color, to voting blocks that more often lean left. And so it's damaging the vote of the left.
Yeah.
is really the problem.
Smells like a conspiracy theory to me. What could we name this?
Vote gate. We seem to put gate after everything.
Gate, yeah.
And,
we can't just give it a letter or a number like Q, right?
No. QAnon, I think, really has the market on that.
And Q. That's it's funny because there's a particular school that I used to work at, and their hat just had a Q on it, and I guess they had to come up with new ways to sell those hats.
Yeah, instead maybe put like 1776 on it or something like that. Yeah, there you go. So election policing ends up being a real political tool. DeSantis actually started an Office of Election Crimes and Security since the 2020 election, but it's been reported that the Office of Election Crimes and Security has had difficulty filling positions, and one report says only 11 of its 18 positions were even filled a year after it opened. Florida has pumped over $1.4 million into this office. These are funds that could be better used elsewhere, but they insist on trying to police former felons who think that they are able to vote. Why not just make an online database? If I can look myself up and see, I can vote, I can't vote, That would change everything.
How much money did you say
they don't
it
want
was?
that.
How much money? What?
$1.4 million.
You know, I think they have a little bit of issue with those things called hurricanes, where they could use that money for rebuilding those roads that just get washed away in those storms. Come on. You just want to do better, Florida, but I don't think they have the ability to do better. It's just always so damn disappointing things that they do. Yeah.
Yeah, and no offense to any Floridian listeners we have out there, but
you take offense, Florida.
I just don't understand the appeal of Florida.
Don't take offense to it.
I don't get you, Florida. I don't get it.
Well, I know what the hell it is. Everybody goes there on vacation. They go to the beach. They go see that big rat in Orlando, right? And it's the most magical place on the planet.
Mickey Rat.
Yeah, the Mickey Rat. It's the most magical place on the planet.
Ricky Rat.
And then they go back home. And they're like, oh, it's cold here. And so they end up moving to Florida because they had a great time on vacation. Florida has great beaches, but they end up realizing there's all these other issues that, you know, when you don't have a state income tax or, you know, whatever else, and you don't spend taxes on a lot of things, you know, it's one of those things, you get what you pay for sometimes. And man, they just don't have a great infrastructure. They don't have great schools. And, you know, they're making them better by taking all those horrible, evil books that talk about education and science out of them and putting in religious books in there.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Bring us PragerU.
Right, exactly. They show videos for PragerU all over the state now. It's just, man. So, yeah, Florida, take offense.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't always live somewhere that you like for a vacation.
Yeah.
Like some places are just better as vacation spots.
Right.
Now, back to felon disenfranchisement. I got to be the killjoy who keeps bringing us back to this sad topic.
Yeah.
As of 2006, 16 million Americans out there have been convicted of a felony, and it's over 5 million disenfranchised felons, which ends up being like roughly 2 to 3% of our voting age population. Now, because we do this on a state-by-state basis, it's not uniformly done across the United States. It's confusing for people. And it also results in some offenders not being able to gain back their rights, or they're accidentally excluded from polls, or people are being excluded who had similar names to those of felons. That's ridiculous. So because there's another Eric Bronson out there who had committed a felony, maybe you get excluded from the voter rolls.
Right.
Now, one of the justifications that people will give for it is the purity of the ballot box. The idea here is democracy needs to be protected from corruption, and these people cannot be trusted to participate in it.
That it's especially after the last election and all the bullshit we're trying, you know, with the steal and what Trump did. What a load of vomit in terms of the purity of the ballot. Oh my God, that's awful.
Well, some people suggest felons would be more likely to participate in electoral fraud, but this is a statement that has absolutely no evidence to support it. Here's an even more fun argument. What if felons are more likely to organize and support candidates who are rebellious and anti-law?
Ooh.
This has no evidence behind it, and it would require more rebellious candidates.
No, but I like that idea. Let's get them to band together, and we can get a rebel group of politicians. I mean that.
Yes, our pirate ship is the platform.
Yeah.
I should also point out, not all felonies are the same. As I mentioned earlier, like I understand voter fraud a little bit, but not all felonies are the same thing. We can't equate burglary and murder because these two are not the same thing. So there should be this varying rate of severity for the crime rather than this automatic application of, hey, because you committed crime X, you can't vote. That's ridiculous.
Crime.
Some of the harms that it's done.
Yeah, crime X is
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say crime X you can't vote, but crime Y you can. Is that what we're at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. So two crimes are not the same crime. Another point to bring up is black men make up about 13%, 6% of the U.S. population, just black men, not black men and women. But black men make up 6% of the U.S. population, but about 36% of all disenfranchised voters. If we were to include black women, that increases the number to about 38% of the disenfranchised population. States with greater minority populations also tend to disenfranchise felons more and be more restrictive about it. Now, if we look to the UN Human Rights Committee said, guess what? These policies are discriminatory. They violate international law. The United States doesn't give a shit.
Right. No. The UN says no. Other human rights groups say, no, this is bad. We don't care. Even though we like to point out that China has horrible human rights, atrocities, but we don't do that kind of stuff. We're the pinnacle of ethical treatment of individuals in society.
Yes, American exceptionalism at its finest, where we're going to be hypocritical and point to the abuses of other countries and fail to recognize some of the shit that goes on within our own borders. Now, felon disenfranchisement can make a difference in elections. So in our 2000 election, Bush versus Gore, Bush won Florida by a very small margin of votes. And at this time, there were around 827,000 disenfranchised voters in Florida. So potentially without felon disenfranchisement laws, history would have taken a different course there. And this also really matters in states with harsh disenfranchisement laws during close elections. It can affect presidential elections, and it has notably affected at least 2 Senate elections that I know of based on the numbers. But the idea here is it's taxation without representation. People, if I get out of prison, I commit a felony, I get out of prison, I am paying my taxes, I'm obeying the laws, but I cannot vote for representatives. That's why we seceded from England.
Right, exactly. This is why we had this little party up here with all the tea, right?
Thank you. That one.
Throw it all in the harbor because what England's doing is horrible, and we don't want to be like them, but we're doing so much worse.
Yes, we're doing it all over again, but just for people who we separate with this us and them dichotomy that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now, there was a national survey that concluded most people did not agree on disenfranchisement. Most people don't necessarily support it unless it's just for currently incarcerated people. When people get out, it makes reintegration more difficult. It makes this distance between offenders and their communities. It makes people feel more isolated. And it could help with reintegration if former offenders feel that they're playing a part in creating the laws that they're forced to obey. We also get this idea of labeling theory, where the idea is people who are former offenders, they feel marked with stigma of a criminal conviction. They feel labeled as offender or labeled as felon. And this is just something to make that label even stickier, make that label stick to them and follow them more throughout their lives. It comes into play by maintaining that, at least on a civil basis, they are lesser than other citizens and will always be. And that sucks.
Yeah.
That's not the message we should be sending.
Exactly. And this reminds me a lot of the something that I do want to hit on later on with one of our topics is the whole offender databases that exist on state Department of Corrections. Some states will they have offenders posted while they're incarcerated. Once they're out, they're no longer on the offender database. Some states have parolee databases, and then there are those that have an offender. If you've been convicted of anything, misdemeanor or felony, they will put you up on that. Imagine Florida is one of those that if you've got a conviction down there, you're on their database. Now this is different than the whole sex offender database that exists with the map that shows you where those folks live. This is just, hey, this person's been convicted. and here's their information. Here's where they're being incarcerated. And so, it is one of those things that, like Florida, as I mentioned, that follows those individuals as long for the rest of their life. Their information's up there about them.
Now, is this information made public?
Oh yeah, so we can go pull it up. We can look at the Florida Department of Corrections, and we can look at their convictions, where they were incarcerated at. No matter how long ago they were convicted, even though they're not on probation or parole any longer, that information's still there. So, but again, not every state's like that. A lot of states, once they're out of the Department of Corrections, they take their information down.
Now, I could see how somebody could make an argument for how a database like that could be useful for law enforcement, but can you make a case for me? Why is that database in existence, and how is it useful for the general public?
It's really not. It really, I mean, I guess in terms of the general public, if you're talking about one where people are currently locked up, you could say it lets the victim's families or the victim know where an inmate is locked up. It also provides, if you want to write an inmate, it provides their information, so you can write them a letter if you want, that sort of information. But I don't much beyond that. I don't see anything other than this allows individuals the opportunity just to look up information on someone and hold it against them.
Yeah, not helpful. I absolutely support. We can look up somebody in a prison, see what prison they're at, so we can send them a letter. Other than that, it's a really dodgy issue, and it's hard to make a concrete case for why this should be in existence, because it's going to do nothing but potentially encourage vigilantism and othering people who are potentially trying to go straight with their lives.
Definitely. It doesn't help in any way. Now, I guess maybe you could say, these databases help with employers trying to figure out what, if somebody marks that little box, yes, I've been convicted of a felony, maybe it allows them to go look up some information so they could see what, if you own some type of company that repairs playground equipment in Florida, and somebody put down, I was convicted of a felony, and you go look up and find out they have a felony that has to do with a child victim. Maybe that's useful then, but beyond that, I can't see much use for these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So it just makes people's lives more difficult, and that. All right. So this concludes part 1 of Felon Disenfranchisement. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with part 2, where we discuss some of the studies on felon disenfranchisement and what we know about the practice. With that, shall we take it over to, what do we call it? The book report?
It's the library lockdown.
Library lockdown.
With that, shall we take it over to library lockdown?
Yes, let's get into that library.
Library lockdown. Library lockdown. Come on in and take a look, 'cause it's time to review a book. It's library lockdown. Library lockdown. Library lockdown. Library lockdown.
Greetings, listeners. Welcome to Library Lockdown. The book for this week is In with the Devil, A Fallen Hero, a Serial Killer, and a Dangerous Bargain for Redemption, published in 2011 by James Keene and Hillel Levin. This is a notable book, as it has more recently been adapted into a limited series on Apple TV called Blackbird. It tells the story of James Keene, who goes by Jimmy. And Jimmy Keene is a football star at a young age in his small town. And he turns to dealing drugs, and he finds he's making a lot of money dealing drugs, and he's able to support his family and support his parents. And then he gets into trouble with Johnny Law, and he gets locked up. He gets a 10-year sentence. So they're holding this 10-year sentence over his head, and then the prosecutor comes to him, an assistant U.S. attorney. And the prosecutor says, hey, we have this guy that we suspect of being a serial killer, Larry Hall, and he's been convicted of one crime, but we're afraid that he might get out on appeal. So if you can determine from him, if you can get him to tell you where he's buried one of the bodies, then we are going to reduce your sentence and let you out early. It's one of those, it sounds like something that's just made for TV, but it's a crazy true story. And I'd actually never heard of one of these deals taking place before. Anything like that, it feels far too manufactured for TV to be real. It's a fascinating story. So in short, Jimmy Keene goes undercover, and he's at MCFP Springfield, which is the United States Medical Center for Federal Prisoners. It was the first federal prison to be designed for federal prisoners, opening in 1933. And there have been some pretty rough conditions there over time. And it's a place that's made for like mentally ill prisoners, chronically ill prisoners, and kind of everything in between. And so he's stationed there. He's incarcerated there, and he befriends Larry Hall, this person who is believed to be a serial killer, and then the story takes off from there. It's a fascinating tale that I would recommend to most people. I don't find myself interested very much with serial killers anymore. I find them, I don't know, I feel like our culture is oversaturated by the serial killer. But this is a really fascinating story, and it's fascinating in how it explores that prison environment, both in the show and in the book. And in the book, they give a more detailed history of the prison, which I found particularly fascinating. I give it 4 out of 5 soups for the book, and maybe 4 1/4 soups for the show. The acting between the two leads is phenomenal, and you're going to be riveted once the two of them start having scenes together. Oh, you're hooked. So recommend the show Blackbird, recommend In with the Devil. That's been our first library lockdown. Nice.
Sounds interesting.
Nice. And Blackbird is a good miniseries. I will.
Oh.
That's some good stuff.
Yeah. What did you think of the riot in there?
The riot was not. I wasn't impressed by the riot scene. I don't know. I love the whole. I think the whole idea of that character Jimmy, working that hard to try and get the information about the bodies, and where they were hidden. That's the part that was really sucked you into the, and then also how the staff is trying to screw him over at the same time, which was great.
Yeah,
but so
yeah, staff was against him. The guy, both actors are excellent.
Yeah,
but Larry Hall, the guy who's suspected of being a serial killer, he's played as such a weird dude that you can't take your eyes off of him.
Right. Yeah. That's you just, man, the Larry Hall character is just creepy as hell. Just his voice. You know? Maybe we need a soundboard voice. Yeah. And
the other lead, Taron Egerton, what a hunk! That dude is just—he's like cut steel. He's incredible.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah.
So if you're into prison stuff, if you're into prison shows, good acting and hot dudes, this is the show for you.
Yeah, hunky men, right? He's definitely one of them.
Indeed. Shall we move on to the movie minute?
Movie minute.
Movie minute. 60 seconds with producer Britt to talk about movies.
All right. As discussed last week, Professor Bronson here sentenced me, Judge Bronson here sentenced me to Rubber from 2010. So let's get into it. Let's put 60 seconds on the clock. Rubber from 2010 was not at all what I was expecting going in. It's kind of billed as a horror movie starring a killer tire, and while it definitely is that, the film starts on a meta-commentary about absurdism and fatalism that runs throughout the entire film and totally justifies itself as part film, part kind of like thought experiment. After that, we're introduced to a crowd of seemingly random people who have volunteered to witness the tire, Robert, as it gains sentience, learns how to kill, and goes on a killing spree. This movie had a lot of twists and turns and things I didn't expect, including a turkey mass poisoning, an incredible amount of head exploding, and a tricycle reincarnation. Was it a horror movie about a killer tire named Robert? Yes. Was it something else entirely? Also, yes. The performances were all serviceable to good, with Wings Hauser and Steven Spinella putting in the best work. The film was directed, written, edited, composed, and had the cinematography done by one guy, Quentin Dupeau, who's obviously French. And honestly, I think he achieved everything he was trying with this movie. Was it perfect? Not really. But do I mess with the vision? I think I do. I'd give it a solid 3 soups, maybe 3.5 soups. I'm still sitting on if it's a good, bad movie or just a kind of good movie.
Oh. That is a sales
was it a
pitch
movie?
if I've
It
ever
sounds like
heard
a movie
one.
you kind of liked.
I was frankly surprised. I thought it was just going to be like a schlocky, like Sharknado type, killer tire just killing people. But like it starts with like this like sheriff guy giving a speech played by Steven Spinella about how like movies are like based in absurdity and they are always making decisions like for no reason whatsoever. And it just like gets you on board and you're like, huh, okay, well, as long as that's like your ethos, I'm into watching this. And it's pretty good, actually, I think. It surprised me.
Wow. That's high praise. That is high praise if I've ever heard it for that movie. I was expecting so much worse.
Me too. So I was pleasantly surprised. Yeah. So I heard you have another movie sentence for me.
Yes.
For next time.
Your sentence.
Judge Bronson, order.
Order in the court. Order in the court or on the podcast. So another very low-ranking video that has been suggested and that you are now sentenced to watch is one known as How to Be a Serial Killer.
How to be a serial.
How to Be a Serial Killer.
It's an instructional movie.
It's an instructional movie. Could be maybe a documentary instructional. Maybe we need to show this in schools.
Okay,
but
2008.
Yeah. A serial killer decides to teach the secrets of his satisfying career to a video store clerk. I am so looking forward to your review.
Yeah.
Because this looks cheesy as hell. This looks bad.
Oh, it's from the director of Fast Girl.
Oh, that sounds like a good double feature.
Yes, it does.
I think it's time to end the podcast. It is lights out, everyone.
Lights out.
Is that what I say? Lockdown?
So like, rate, subscribe, all that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. This has been Prison Breakdown. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Again, I've been Professor Beck Strah, joined by Eric Bronson and producer Britt. Lights out.